Okay. Oh, no, just left. All right. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I'm going to do a little brief intro. We're set to get started at 4:30, and I was kind of going to try to wait on some students to join, but I think what we may end up doing today is kind of treating this like a podcast episode. Um, Trying to figure out why I'm getting such a terrible echo though. But
I think
anyway,
it might have been my computer. I'm gonna put my computer on mute. My speaker sounds really bad.
gotcha. Sorry. Okay. So you already have the lineup.
You're asking if I already have the questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do. Are you
Okay.
going to ask me the questions, or do you want me to just go line by line?
Oh, I mean, I can ask them. Yeah. Let me find them. Thank you for your patience. All right, I'm good to go. Okay, if you're just joining us, or if you are watching this on YouTube or on Instagram, or our Instagram page, today this event is called Brick by Brick. We're going to be doing a conversation about civil engineering, architecture, and just getting yourself out there, networking, and a few other things. The speaker today, the presenter today, is a close friend of mine, someone that is very good at what she does, someone that I admire as a professional and want to be just like when I grow up. Miss Meredith Stone, she's been at this civil engineering thing for a while now, has definitely made her mark in the city, and I definitely would like for you to welcome her, and we're going to get to know her a little bit and talk about her journey. So, Meredith, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, and we'll go from there.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Meredith Stone. I am a native Savannaian, and I went to Johnson High School, which is right next to Savannah State. I graduated from the IB program, and from there I attended Hampton University, where I got my Master's of Architecture from their 5-year program, which included a semester of studying abroad in France. Apologies if my computer makes a little bit of noise.
Fine.
But just one moment.
Mm-hmm. Take your time.
So I attended Hampton University. I got my master's in architecture, and then I moved back to Savannah. And since then, I have been working with Gunmeyer Hoff Shea Architects, which is an architecture company here in Savannah, Georgia. And we specialize on a lot of different types of things, but mostly we specialize on making things that are very beautiful and noteworthy for this area. We do multifamily housing, we do civic institutions, libraries, art centers, large-scale urban design improvements like River Street. Hotels and hospitality is a very big portion of our work that we do. And so I've experienced a lot within the last few years of being back in Savannah, and a lot of that does tie into civil engineering in a lot of ways. And so in addition to architecture, I am also a licensed real estate agent with Vantage Realty, which is one of the top real estate companies for commercial and residential real estate here in Savannah. And so that is what I do on my nights and weekends in helping owners develop their land and buy land in order to create architecture on it, or with architecture already on it. And so that is a little bit about myself, if that answers the question.
Absolutely. It does. We're, I guess, being from Savannah, I'm trying to do this in a way to where people that aren't from Savannah kind of understand your journey. So we can talk a little bit about education. So you did say that you went off to Hampton University. Is that correct?
Yes, I attended Hampton University, and Hampton is in Hampton, Virginia.
Mhm.
And it is on the coast, very similar to Savannah. So the landscape is a bit the same, but and it's kind of flat like Savannah and coastal. But I left there after attending for 5.5 years, and that half year was a summer going abroad in urban design. And it was pretty hard because during that time, I also ran a property management company. I started a property management company. I met a landlord and I started managing his properties. And then I met a few of his friends and I started managing their properties. So it was very, and I also worked at the radio station for work study. So there was a lot of work that I had to do in the midst of taking 18 credit hours of architecture courses and math courses and science courses and everything that you had to take to meet your master's in architecture degree qualifications. So it was a lot of work, but I made it out by, I think I was 22 when I graduated. And then I gave myself some time about 6 months after I graduated to solidify where I was going to work. And I was looking at larger cities, expecting that they might be a little bit more accommodating to somebody like me with the type of interest that I have. They might be a little bit more diverse. I had all these different nuances and thoughts of why I thought that I should leave. But I ended up getting this job, and it's been an incredible job because of the diversity of places we work on and the type of impact that we have in Savannah specifically. Um, there's not a lot of, well, I won't say there's not a lot of high ground, but a lot of the high ground is already built up on in Savannah. So being able to work on buildings that are downtown and are have, I guess, different elevations and different impacts on those buildings, versus most places that you might work in Savannah where your elevation changes might be pretty minimal by a couple of inches across the whole board. So I don't know if that answers your question or if that was a question, Cedric, but that's kind of the gist of how I got into doing what I'm doing.
Got it. And I wanted you to also tell us how you got into that program. Like, how did you find a program with a master's attached to it? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So Hampton, and there are a few other institutions in the country that do this as well. I think FAMU might be one of them, and you can actually get a dual master's. You can get a master's in business as well as a master's in architecture at the same time. But Hampton recognized that for most people that want to achieve licensure, if that's the correct way to say that, if you want to become a licensed architect in the state of Georgia, as well as most other states in America, you have to have a master's degree in architecture. So that means that most people would have to apply to grad school in order to get their degree. And in addition to getting your master's, you also have to complete 3 years equivalent, which it can be much longer than 3 years depending on what you work in your career field. But it makes you have 3 years of internship development points in specific areas. So those areas may be schematic design or construction documents or construction administration or project management or site development and analysis. There are all these different areas that they want you to know that you have the experience in coordinating and designing. And then you also, in addition to that, have to take 5 exams. And all of them are case study based exams that require mountains of information per exam that you have to know and be aware of and understand how it works in combination with your experience. And then you can become a licensed architect. So what Hampton decided to do was to just go ahead and make that process a little bit shorter, which is great because it's a very long process. I mean, there were people in my graduate program that never got their license, that had been working as draftsmen and were really good at what they did and were in their 60s in my class coming back to get their master's degree so that they could earn their internship development points and get their architecture license. So it is a very rigorous process and people can take their time with it. But I attended there, and there were probably 10 people from our original class of 60 that were with me on graduation date. But there are people that switch majors because architecture was a very difficult major. It was the only building on campus that was open 24/7. And you slept a lot of nights in that building if you wanted to get your projects done. And it was an interesting type of school because you have studio classes, which is where you get to implement all the different things that you learn in design. But then you have all of your component classes, which reinforce what you're doing in your studio classes. So, for example, in second year architecture school, you might be learning about different things that are happening in the environment that affect a building, whether it's sun, wind, rain, and different things that can basically impact your building, and different techniques that you can use and systems that you can use to protect your building from taking on water or getting knocked down and all the other forces that happen to buildings. But in addition to that, we would also take a graphic design and implementation class, a digital reprographics class, so that we learn how to use Photoshop and learn how to use Revit, which is a huge program that's really integral to what I do. We build everything that we do in our office, practically everything that we do as Revit models. And so it's an active building technology so that you can, instead of using CAD, which is basically layers of line work, it's actually building components that store all of its relevant information and data and creates a computer 3D model as you're building it, which is very helpful when you want to draw things like sections and floor plans and elevations, to draw a wall once and it's already appearing in 3 places rather than having to redraw it as though you would potentially in AutoCAD. I digress. Where was I in my story before that?
So, we were talking about the program itself. So like you kind of dived into some of the things that the program has to offer. And I know that there are some students, there may be 1 or 2 students that actually did join that were interested in different programs that they could go to for masters, different master's programs that they could go into. I'm sorry, it's been a very weird day. And so like I know that is another HBCU, so it's like that connection you're saying that is very similar to Savannah, and some people may want that kind of home feel, because that is the feel that Savannah gives a lot of students. That's a lot of reason why some people do come here. So I want to make sure that they're informed about those options that they do have. You don't have to necessarily go to specialized schools because there are specialized schools within the HBCU network. And there's probably, I don't know, was there like NSBE and all of those types of organizations there? So if you're a part of those organizations, you can definitely make connections. I'm not sure if you guys do National Research Mentoring Network either, but maybe. If not, there's still that. I know that that network is pretty big, so it would like be a great idea to kind of jump into looking at that as an option if you're looking to do architecture or if you're looking to further your certifications in civil engineering, because the rap sheet that you just gave off is like all of these. How many things, if you don't mind me asking, are you certified to do? If I don't know if I'm asking that correctly.
So for me, I am an architectural designer. I cannot call myself an architect because I am not licensed. I have not taken my exams. I've gotten my master's degree and I've completed all of my experience requirements, but I have not taken my test yet. So I'm not licensed to practice architecture, which means that I can't stamp my own drawings that say this will shed water and stand upright and meet building codes. But I work for architects with my job. And so I am, by the right of my job, given a lot of capacities of things that I have to work with that are basically the products of what architects produce. One of those things, or you asked me to, are you asking me to talk about my experience with Hampton and advocating for graduate schools that are at HBCUs, or do you want me to talk about?
No, I was reiterating like the point that while you were there at Hampton, you gathered a lot of certifications. And I wanted you to speak more on the importance of the certifications that you have, or just the importance of getting certified in something while you're in undergrad, while you're working on your master's, because really, from what I'm learning at least, is that certifications are really the bread and butter of any industry. What are you qualified to do? You know what I'm saying? And if you're interested in getting into this field and making those networks and connections, what should you be qualified to do? Like, where should their mind be? What should they be focusing on? Because some of these students are seniors. Some of these students that are going to watch this are seniors, and they are dealing with that "I'm not sure" vibe, you know. And so we want to destroy that by giving them a plan, or setting their sights right towards certifications, towards different master's degree programs, et cetera. So if you could speak more about the certifications themselves and the importance of the certifications, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So for the certifications themselves, there are a lot of different routes that you can take. And like I said, I am an architect, not a civil engineer, but our paths do cross a lot in the different institutions and organizations that govern our jobs. I think that a huge certification that you want to look into is the LEED program. And that has to do with sustainable building. And it is I would say it's an industry standard that at one point was very cutting edge and pushing technology forward and building technology and systems forward so that we'd incorporate sustainable practice and sustainable thinking in what we do. However, a lot of building codes, including Savannah's building code, have adapted so much that their standards are almost to the quality of of a LEED project to begin with, at least a basic LEED project. There are different projects that I can just give you examples of that have become LEED. We worked on a hotel that's the Homewood Suites that is on River Street, at the east end of River Street. It's the thing with the lotus flower at the top as you're coming into downtown. And that building was built on a steep decline down to River Street from Bay Street. And it had an interesting geometry, but way back in the day, prior to that becoming the site of a hotel, it was the site of a very large natural gas plant. And so there were all these just disgusting things inside of the ground that you really don't want to sleep over. I mean, in a hotel. You don't want to live there. You don't want to breathe the air. And so they had to do a lot of land remediation for that. And they had to incorporate a lot of different systems and technologies to make sure that the ground that is contaminated would stay clear of the ground that is that's around the building. And so that project was the only LEED certified hotel that I'm aware of that has ever been built in Savannah. And a huge component of them meeting the, I guess, LEED standard was contributed through civil engineers. So our civil engineer was a LEED certified civil engineer. So that, I think, is one certification that definitely overlaps that I could recommend. Understanding how to use Revit is really important depending on what kind of job you do. Revit is a technology that most people are familiar with, at least on the East Coast. Most people use it instead of AutoCAD in order to design buildings, and it's incredibly helpful when a civil engineer knows how to build, I guess, land and make detail groups and things that can be incorporated inside of Revit rather than AutoCAD, because there's a lot of overlap and room for error and room for information to get lost in translating between, okay, the civil engineer gives me this document and it's an AutoCAD that, jives with a certain wall a certain kind of way. And if you don't put it and place it exactly in that wall and keep it there in your three-dimensional model, then as things move, as things flux, you don't even notice that that flat 2D work that comes out of AutoCAD is left behind in your building model. And so I think that understanding Revit is really important. Revit also has a lot of civil engineering components inside of it. I have a friend that has been working with, I guess, not ride share, but bike ride companies in San Diego. And he was utilizing Revit to create basically an entire global 3D global information system to track where people were going on their bikes and how exactly that impacted the traffic and the demand on the roads in that city that he was in. And so there are just several levels and layers that you can get into with it. But I think that's another computer program that's really important to know. I want to step outside of certifications because in my experience, the biggest thing that has propelled me forward in my career has been the network of people that I've met in any given place that aren't necessarily civil engineers, that aren't necessarily architects, but you just never know who you know or who you're going to run into. And so a lot of opportunities that have been thrown my way or that I've been able to become a part of haven't even necessarily been because I knew everything about Revit or I knew everything about LEED. It just mattered that I got in the door and that I just so happened to meet a person, that was developing a piece of land and they needed someone that knew something about architecture, and I just so happened to run into them. I don't know. That just to say that I also think that in addition to getting your necessary certifications and also like just making sure that you know your necessary technologies, attend these types of programs and whatever you can that is associated with connecting you to other professionals that might not be civil engineers, but are related to the building technology and construction industry, because those people will be able to push you forward so that you understand the world outside of civil engineering and, you know, how it will impact you to be able to do the thing that you want to do as a career.
Great answer. That actually kind of segues perfectly into the next question or the next part, which is, how did you choose this career? This is a very niche career, and it sounds like being in this niche career and having the expertise that you do, it's put you in a lot of good positions. So how did your journey lead to you walking into a registrar's office or getting onto a computer and clicking on whatever it was that you chose that got you to this point? Like, how did this come about, for sure?
So it really all started in my childhood. I think I was like 8 or 9, and I really liked drawing hamster cages. And my parents were looking at what I was doing and they said, "Oh, that looks like architecture." And they introduced me to their friend, who just so happened to be Eric Meyerhoff, who is the late founder of Gunn Meyerhoff Shea Architects, which is where I work. He reviewed my work and he said, "Wow, this is amazing. It looks like a freshman year architecture student's work," which to me at the time was wildly impressive. And then I found out that that was low key an insult, because once I saw what everybody else was doing my freshman year of architectural school, I was like, oh no, it's not architecture. This is awful. But I digress. So I basically after that said, oh, okay, I think architecture is what I want to do. And I had a choice of doing biology or computer science or architecture for school. And I wanted to attend an HBCU. I had my eyes on Spelman, but Spelman did not have architecture. And I decided instead that I would go to Hampton for a lot of the various reasons that I mentioned before, why Hampton was a great experience. But after I attended Hampton, I wasn't necessarily sold on architecture being the thing that I wanted to do, because I was having some really, I'll put it at interesting experiences in college that were changing. Like, I just wasn't sure, like, is this really the thing for me? I've been telling myself my whole life that architecture is what I want to do. Now I've spent 3.5 years in it and I'm really not feeling it, but I'm like 2 years away from getting my master's degree. And if I start over, I have to start all the way over, and I don't really want to be in school for that long. So, but I'm very glad, very, very glad that I stuck with the intuition, which was, you started this, go ahead and finish it. And at the end of the day, a master's degree is a master's degree. So if you end up working in a different field, there are a lot of soft skills that can translate over from architecture to elsewhere. So I got into architecture because I was networking. I went to a happy hour after work, or not after work, but after working on my resume during the day. And after I finished working on my resume, I went out with a few friends and I ran into my boss's son. And he told me that his dad's company was hiring and that I should check it out. And so I contacted him later that week and he told me the exact time to show up and who I needed to talk to. And so I assumed that he had told the office that I was coming. But it turns out that they had no idea that I was coming. And I walked in the door and I introduced myself and said, "Hey, I'm Meredith Stone, and I just got my master's degree in architecture, and I really want a job and I was told that you guys might be hiring and these are the things that I do and this is where I worked. And I just gave my whole elevator speech and then found out they didn't even know who I was, but they were impressed that I just walked in the door and just said, hey, give me a job. So they called me back in for a second interview and they said, hey, look, we're actually not hiring right now, but we think that you're a really interesting person and we want you to work here. So give us a few months and we can start you working at the beginning of next year, which was perfect because student loans were hitting and I needed money so I could pay for my student loans. And it just kind of all worked out. Well, that's how I ended up in the position at Gunmeyer Hofsche. And I have stayed in this position at Gunmeyer Hofsche because of how really awesome my job is. Like every year I notice something increasingly different about just the way I love to enjoy life. Like I was thinking the other day, when I go somewhere, I can literally think of how is that put together and how does that stand up and what makes that thing look like that thing anywhere I go. And I can do that in any room all the time, whether I'm sitting down waiting in Outback or whether I am walking through a park. I mean, there all types of things in this world are structures. So that hold on just a second. I'm sorry. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. So, yeah, whether it's walking in the park or chilling out anywhere, like things are interesting, things are built. So that's really cool. And then also being able to be back in Savannah and working in a place that I grew up and where I recognize how things looked a decade ago and 2 decades ago, and what types of opportunities were available for different demographics of people, for different economic classes of people, for different places to work, different places to go have fun. And so it's really cool. As an architect, you are essentially a change agent. That's what you do. You change things. And so, I mean, they don't hire architects to keep things the same. They hire them to develop things differently to fit a new design or to fit a new vision. So it's been really cool being able to do what I like to call urban acupuncture in different places around Savannah and seeing that those things just spawn into new like places that people think were there all along. So for example, one of the projects that I worked on was the Alita Hotel. And the Alita Hotel is on the west end of River Street, right behind the new JW Marriott, the Plant Riverside district. And Alita was designed for that location, and there is a stairwell that was built in conjunction with it. That was a public-private partnership between the city of Savannah and the private developers of the hotel. And so the hotel basically built a piece of right-of-way that's owned by the city for the city. And it gives ADA access from City Market down to River Street. And aside from the elevator on River Street that's by City Hall, there was no other elevator that you could access River Street from. Right, right. So there's some really, really cool things about being able to say, okay, when I left Savannah, this whole end of River Street looked like a shooting gallery. And now I've come back and I've had a hand in building this 8-story boutique hotel next to a public right-of-way and stairs. And then that across the street spawned JW Marriott to be placed as another hotel that can accent it right across the street. And so that whole area of River Street now is completely live and activated, and people don't even notice that it wasn't there all along because of how it was designed to fit and look like it belonged there.
And I have to say, y'all did an amazing job. As someone that has lived in Savannah my entire life, worked downtown, I remember having to walk down that hill. That it's kind of funny. That hill just used to lead right into River Street, and now like people just kind of keep walking right into the river, and there's like a fountain there and everything like that. And like it, people used to kind of avoid that side of River Street. The active side used to be down by like Joe's Crab Shack and the other hotel back when it was first built. And now there's like apartments and stuff over there. And like on the, like you said, the west end of the hotel, I mean, the west end of River Street is almost like the popular side now. It's like people don't even go to City Market anymore. So they do, but it's a lot more active than it used to be. And what I'm also noticing is that it's bringing a lot more tourism, which brings a lot more jobs, which brings a lot more positive energy. We actually in my MPA class had a conversation with former Mayor Otis Johnson. And we were talking about some of the housing and, other, more of the political science side of things like that. But to hear the building side, the things that people are doing to make it better, because I know if you're helping with building things for people in the city, that's causing more jobs and things like that. And then you're doing the real estate, which is also helping people on their personal front with homes. So I was going to ask, why did you return to Savannah? Because I know sometimes the stigma is, well, I've gotten out of Savannah, I've gotten everything I need, I'm not going back. And so you came back and then you added to what is here. And so you kind of touched on it already a little bit, but what is this? I guess I can ask, what does this city really mean to you? And seeing the work that you're doing, how is it affecting you? To see the fruits of your labor since graduation, because you've done a lot. You're muted.
Thank you. It's been really awesome. I can't say that it's been anything less than that. And I was also one of those people that had that notion of, so there's nothing in Savannah for me when I come back. But I realized that buildings happen everywhere on this earth. And I already had a beautiful network of people that raised me, that were here, that I could plug into and develop with as a professional. And it just made sense. And so seeing these different things go up and having the impact that they do on the community has been huge. Like you said, I do real estate as well. I am a real estate agent, and I'm not just doing residential real estate, I'm also doing commercial real estate. And so being able to do and use the skill set that I've learned through my job, which is studying land to figure out what is capable of fitting there, and then translating that into real estate to help commercial clients figure out, hey, I have a piece of land that I'm interested in buying and I want to build something on it. Can you help me build that? Or can you help me figure out what it is so I know how much I can offer to build some land? Like those types of things are really cool, because that can happen anywhere in Savannah. It can happen anywhere in Georgia. It can happen anywhere all over the world, but it is really cool to do it in a place like Savannah because it's home. So I don't know if that answers your question, but Savannah is a different kind of city. Sometimes it takes a bit longer to develop things here and to go through, I guess, the building process here, because there are so many rules that are important to sustain Savannah's history, I guess you could say. So, for example, in the downtown historic district, there is an ordinance that basically tells you what can and cannot, how buildings can and cannot be built inside of the historic district. And there are multiple historic districts. So, understanding the rules of how to navigate that and how to design quality architecture in the middle of very taut kind of constraining rules about proportions of windows and types of massings and how high things can be and how things can be articulated and what kind of details things can have. It can be very difficult to still feel like you have control. I don't know if you can necessarily say that any architect ever has control of the design because their client is the person that they're trying to please. But it's been interesting to have such a structured experience in getting to understand and learn architecture as a young professional. I've considered going and moving to Houston and getting a job doing architecture in Houston before I agreed to staying in Savannah. And when you look at somewhere like Houston, zoning does not exist. I mean, you can have a shopping mall next to a preschool, next to a house, next to a dentist's office, next to a strip club, next to, it just, and everything looks like it's supposed to be what the other building looks like. So the church looks like the shopping center, and the library looks like the church, and it doesn't always make sense, but a lot of those things are controlled through our zoning ordinance. One thing that I did not mention is I'm also on the Chatham County Zoning Board of Appeals, which has been a very interesting experience. And zoning has a lot to do with what I do in architecture, because zoning, for those of you who do not know, are the laws of the land. So the reason why a Kroger can be built in one place and houses cannot is because of zoning. And so that is also interesting, to be able to not just get to know zoning at the granular level that makes Savannah Savannah, but also to be able to get to know the ordinances that are overlaid on top of the zoning that make it even more specific to make Savannah look like Savannah. All of those things are really interesting and really cool.
I actually did not know that about the zoning thing. I wonder sometimes if that is why certain things are affected. I guess on the political side, I've got kind of a political mindset right now just because of yesterday's conversation that I had, and I'm trying not to be political because this is about STEM. So excuse me, but no, that's really good information about zoning. I did not know that the reason that certain buildings don't exist in this city was because of those types of ordinances. I did hear a rumor, I don't know how true this is, that you can't build above the trees.
Yeah, so I don't know if the trees is necessarily the rule, but Savannah does have a lot of limitations within its zoning code to build high buildings. Not necessarily, when I say high, I just mean like, above 4 stories usually gets some negativity cast upon it within downtown Savannah. And as you get further into Savannah, your density gets even less and less and less. And so, yeah, Savannah is very different from an urban design standpoint. Oglethorpe, who is what the mall is named after, and, you know, downtown and everything else. Oglethorpe founded the Savannah as the capital of Georgia, which was going to be the final colony. And he founded it as a workman's paradise. So it was supposed to be a place where they would release all of the, I'm sorry, I'm giving you a brief history lesson, but they were supposed to release all of the prisoners from debtors' prisons in Ireland. And this would be a place where they could have a place to work, and places, civic places that they could also gather in the midst of squares. So you had trusts and tithing lots. The tithing lots were the places where people lived, and the trust lots were the banks, the schools, the libraries, the museums, the churches, the big, you know, places where people would gather and where you would create civic life. And all of that would surround squares, which are very green, luscious spaces that people can enjoy the heat of Savannah in constant shade. So it was originally designed to be kind of a utopia for people working. And quickly after that, they said, oh, F this, we want to be lazy. Let's bring in slaves. So it quickly shifted from the intention of what it was, to be honest. But they're part of the planning, the urban planning that was very essential, was the planting of the trees, and how many oak trees. And if you look at a picture of Savannah, you can probably recognize it because of how many beautiful tall oak trees there are. There are a lot of oak trees, and there are a lot of protections for the trees within downtown Savannah, and with all over Chatham County. There is a lot of protection to keep our trees unhindered so that they can keep living and growing. But it does, I think that could have a bit of a psychological effect on people if they're used to seeing trees as the biggest thing, and they think that the buildings should not be much grander.
There's this joke amongst some of my students. They call Savannah the village hidden in the leaves, kind of like from Naruto. I think it's hilarious because it's the truth. Like, we really are the village hidden in the leaves. It's a small town feel, but we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You've already kind of touched on the importance of networking several times, so I won't belabor you with continuing that. I will say, though, that you are, from my knowledge, very involved in different councils, and you mentioned a few of them, clubs and organizations, and just very well connected. And I think a big part of that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a big part of that is that you're not afraid to put yourself out there. I really enjoyed the story that you were giving us about how you got the GM shade position by just going out on a whim, and kind of like you got wind of a situation, just decided to go out on your own, show it up, and made it happen for yourself. You didn't really wait on anybody to make anything happen. And I like that continuing trend that you have. It seems like when you want something, there's already a plan in action before you even finish the thought of wanting it, you know? I like that kind of mindset is kind of what we're trying to portray to our students, and what we want them to start pushing forward is like, hey, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to be wrong or make a mistake, because look at what it can build for you. Look at the position that it can put you in, you know? So I won't ask you much more about networking unless you'd like to share more networking stories, but I would like you to share, if you have any stories about some on the job or on site situations, a hard hat story, if you will. Because I know, were you a part of the New Cultural Arts Center?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. So that's pretty new. So there's got to be some building moments. Maybe a drone fell on somebody or something. I don't know. I don't know what happens in these situations. Honestly, I'll be driving, and then it'll be an empty lot that's roped off, and then I'll drive by 2 weeks later, and there's some guys outside, and I'll drive by 2 weeks later, and it's done. It's like, I don't know how you guys get so much done so fast. Are y'all in cahoots with ACOM Hunt? Because I talk to them, and they get a lot of work done too. So how does that, tell me, don't tell me about the process, but give me some stories that you may have about the lighter side of your job.
Yeah, so part of my job for about 2.5 years, I was primarily working in construction management, and I was managing the construction of the Cultural Arts Center at the same time that I was managing the construction of the Alita Hotel. And they were right down the street from each other, so it worked out, but it was a lot to keep those two projects separate and steady at the same time. So trying to think of some cool hard hat stories. There were some definitely some trying times during construction. The whole purpose of the architect being present during the construction process is to play checks and balances between the owner and the builder. And
you can share some of the tougher times too if you need to.
Sure. So the purpose of it is to keep checks and balances, and that way the architect can say, hey, this is the product that I specified that you got priced by the builder, and this is not what I specified. You need to, builder, either build it correctly or convince me why I should let it be built that way. And then the owner, that protects the owner, so they don't just hand over paychecks to the builder and they don't realize that they're not getting what they desired and their intention was. So there were definitely some moments that in construction that it was very important to build a close and trusting relationship with the builder, because he's responsible for making sure that your baby comes out the oven right. Like it needs to be built with quality and care. And you have to be very careful about, it's kind of like pissing off the person that's feeding you your food. You don't want to piss off your waiter, because you never know what they're going to do as soon as you turn around that might not be good. So there were a few moments like that on the Cultural Arts Center where we had to balance between nice and mean. One of those was an accidental spill of paint on the walls, and they accidentally splashed paint on what was supposed to be completely clear coated CMU walls. So basically the design intent was to have very warm wood contrasting the cool CMU that goes all the way around this rotunda curve in the arts area, in the studio area. And if you painted that block, it immediately went flat and it looked just kind of like a glorified elementary school hallway. Like it didn't look like anything spectacular, but we got a certain type of CMU block that was smooth and finer than regular CMU block. And that way it would have a smooth texture to it, but you could really see the pure texture of concrete next to the pure texture of wood. And the superintendent, after we had mentioned several times that it needed to be of quality and they needed to make sure that it wasn't covered in nicks and dirt and everything else, the superintendent let the painter come in and paint all of the walls. And so we had a problem with that. And they ended up having to take and strip all of the walls of the paint that they had painted it with. And because the walls were now chemically washed of this paint, I had to go back in and tape each individual block that had stains on it with different color tapes to mark 3 different colors of gray, so that all of these variated patterns of CMU brick would basically be painted like CMU by CMU, and that way it would give the look but not show the stains that were all on the wall from the paint being washed away on it. So very complex, But it was really hard because after that, they did us no favors because we made them do so much work to get that wall right. But we really felt like it was an important piece of the design, and they had paid a significant amount more for these construction blocks that they were just going to cover up and destroy. So I think that's one situation that I can think of. Another situation that was really interesting, and this is just from the perspective of being the youngest, only Black woman on a job site. So I walk on the job site, and everyone else there is an old white man. Everybody. And that's not necessarily intimidating for me. I walk in, walk out, I do my job. I'm not really there to think about what color people are, but it does impact for some reason. It's not intimidating for me, but somehow it feels intimidating for them. Like they don't know, does not compute, why is she here? Just have some strange reactions when it came to interacting with people. And so one time, like I said, the purpose of an architect is to kind of keep checks and balances in the construction administration process to make sure that the owner is paying for what they intend on paying for. And we had a situation where there were no stairs installed yet in the building. There were no elevators, no nothing. You just had to climb ladders all the way up to the top of the roof. And it was nothing but wide open air all the way around. So it was very scary because I'm scared of heights. But I went earlier in the day to the top of the building to make sure that, like, just to see, just to take pictures, just to do a field report. And while I was out there, I didn't see roofing materials. And on their last pay application, they told us that they had spent almost $500,000 on roofing materials. So I was a little confused because it's my job to sign off and say what they said was true. And I went back to the contractor and I asked, hey, where are the roofing materials? And he kept brushing me off and he was like, oh, they're somewhere in the building. And I was like, but no, where are they? Because I need to go and confirm and see with my eyes that they're there. And he told me that they were up on the roof. And then he, in the middle of telling me that they were on the roof, switched up what he was saying and said, well, don't worry about it. You can't climb up there because you're a woman and you can't, I don't think that you should climb all the way up there. And I just couldn't believe that he said that because it was literally like HR rule number one. No, you just don't say something like that in a professional space. But I was just like, well, as a woman, I had no problem climbing up to the ladder 20 minutes ago when I did not see your roofing material. So can you either send me a picture of it or show me and tell me exactly where it is so I can take a picture of it, because you're not going to get $1.2 million today if I don't see the roofing material. And that has nothing to do with me being a woman or Black or young or any of those things. But I think that's another interesting hard hat story that was kind of eye-opening, like, people still haven't caught up to 2020 yet, I see. But anyways, those type of experiences happen, and you just have to like understand that sometimes people just don't get it, and you just do you.
Well, you are doing wonderful. Oh, wait, I'm wait till you mute it. There we go. You're doing wonderful. Oh gosh, sorry, it got really cold in here. I promise I'm going to be a better moderator. I just got really excited about this event today because of everything that you have shared with us. And I know I've been asking questions this entire time, but there is a portion for Q&A. And then but before that, I'd like to briefly discuss the downtown tour trip. for those that are interested, I'm still working on getting transportation. But if I am not able to get transportation, excuse me, we will be meeting near City Hall. I will send the exact directions and information for those that will not be riding the bus or the however we're getting down there. There's going to be more information coming, but we do have a few buildings that we're going to go by and see. And there may be some pending weather, so kind of everybody, um, you know, stay in the loop and check for communication. But the plan is to go by Savannah City Hall, Plant Riverside District, Alita Hotel, City Market, River Street, and Savannah Cultural Arts Center. Were there any other places that I may have missed that you might have a hand in or want to show downtown? Because the idea is to schedule it from 9 to like maybe 12 to get lunch, and then, but it doesn't have to be that long. It kind of just depends on what you're available to.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, we can hike a lot of downtown, or we can try to stay in one general area, because a lot of the work that I've done is on extreme west or extreme east side of River Street. And
I don't think that any student that come will have a problem with walking.
okay, so we can meet on the west end, so maybe meet at the Cultural Arts Center, and
Okay.
and then make our way down to River Street to the Alita, and then make our way down from there to the President's Quarters, and then go from President's Quarters down to the east end of River Street.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. So those students that are in here that may want to be a part of that tour, please make sure that you have to write not a one page, like a brief letter of intent or a statement of intent or statement of interest saying why you're interested in this field and why you want to go on this trip. And you will have to complete a liability form before you get on the bus, before you come down. Or if you're meeting us there, you'll have to complete a liability form either prior to the day of or when you get down there. We just want to make sure everyone's safe. And because this is a cultural and educational trip, we have to make sure that we're covered on all sides. So I'm very much looking forward to that. You get to see some of the work firsthand. I know some of you may or may not have been downtown. Some of you may or may not be freshmen. If you're watching this on YouTube or Instagram, you may be freshmen and have not been into the thicket of downtown and into the trees. So we'd like to give you an opportunity to go into the trees and kind of get to enjoy and see Savannah. Pending weather, though, because if it is raining, we will have to postpone or maybe try to schedule throughout the day. Well, like I said, I will be keeping everybody in the loop and be the liaison between Ms. Stone and our student body that is interested in coming. Does anyone have any further questions for Ms. Stone? None in the chat. If not, I would like to thank everyone that has been here. I know we had some people kind of jump in and out, but I'm very thankful for anyone that was able to come in and get some of this information. I'm very thankful for Ms. Stone, Ms. Meredith. Thank you. Give you a round of applause for such a wonderful presentation and giving us some of this information that these students definitely can benefit from. If you have any closing remarks or anything else that you want to share, you can go ahead. And if not, then we will end the meeting here and everyone can go about their day.
I don't know if everyone's got the capacity to see their screens, but if you guys wanted, I could just show you a couple of projects that I mentioned that are just on our website. Our website at Gunmeyer Hofsche is SavannahArchitects.com. So that's architect with an S, SavannahArchitects.com. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and you will see our website. Or can you guys see the website? Can you see it? Yes? Okay. All right, great. So this is kind of our landing page of the types of projects that we do. The Alita Hotel that I mentioned a lot is the one in this picture right here. And let me load some more. It was an 8-story boutique hotel made to look like it was always there, but it was just built 3 years ago. So this is the interior of the Alita. We had somebody else do the interior design of it. This is that stairway that I mentioned that was a city partnership project. So there are planter beds right here and a big wide staircase here and then an elevator right here. That's the Alita. Another project that I mentioned was the Cultural Arts Center. And this one is very new as well. And this is kind of that example of the exposed CMU block that I was telling you guys about that we wanted to make sure was clean and could give you the textured look so that you could feel that it's really concrete in different shades. This is the performance theater that was part of it. And this is the lobby that welcomes you. They have these grand modern seats that are actually derived in design inspiration from wooden benches that you'd see in Savannah. But we tried to make a contemporary interpretation of it. So we wrapped the wood all the way up to the ceilings, which was kind of cool. We've done a lot of different things. Like I mentioned, we did River Street as a design. River Street did not always look like River Street. It was once full of mud and boat stuff for people that were carrying shipment and porting things into and out of Savannah. And they came to Gunn and Meyerhoff back in the 1970s, and Eric Meyerhoff was inspired by a recent trip that he did to Copenhagen with his bride, and they designed River Street so that it would be cobblestoned and store-fronted and a beautiful place for people to go. So that's some of the civic buildings. We also do commercial design, and we do a ton of historic preservation. The historic preservation work that we've done, we've worked on some designs for Factors Walk. We've worked on some of the really kind of staples within historic downtown, Bull Street Baptist Church, the old Georgia Power Building, even Hill Hall was a building that we did. When Hill Hall burned down, Gunmeyer Shea was actually doing the documented plans, the construction document plans for the building. And when Hill Hall burned completely down, they basically restored it completely from Gunmeyer Hofshea's drawings, and we've continued to do work at Hill Hall ever since. These are kind of old pictures of what Hill Hall once was since their recent renovations, but those are just some examples. I just didn't want to just talk about architecture this entire time and not give everybody some reference as to what the things look like that I do.
No, that's greatly appreciated. Sometimes those visual aids are exactly what people need to see and get the inspiration that they need. So thank you again. Once again, if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to ask. Other than that, do you mind if students reach out to you outside of this, maybe to do a one-on-one or possibly get some insight about different networking options or something like that?
Absolutely. People can reach out to me. If you have Facebook, then just look up Meredith Stone. Or if you have Instagram, my Instagram account for my real estate is Real Estate Stone. So you can follow that at Real Estate Stone, and you can feel free to message me on there.
All right. Cool. Thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording in the meeting.
Let me also include that Gunmeyer Shea's Instagram account is at GM Shea Architects.
Ooh, spell architects.
ARCHITECTS.
ICE.
Architects.
I got it. I'm just being a little slow. Oh, I lost my screen. Okay. Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong. Moving back.
Architect with a T. Architect.
Oh, what? I'm typing way too.
Cedric, are you still there?
Yeah. Sorry. I lost my window for a second. But we are good to go. Thank you again, and everyone have a wonderful day. I will reach out to you about the other stuff later.
Thank you.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.